Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from the Colonial Dungeon, this is the Court Martial Podcast! Introducing your host for this evening, he has a bald spot on the top of his head, and he weighs in tonight at a number you don't need to know. He is the Colonial Loudmouth, Sean McCarty! And welcome to another edition of the Court Martial Podcast. I am, as always, your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. We are going to go through this as quickly as possible because I have other things to do today. I'm not sure whether this is going to air on the Friday or the Saturday of this weekend. It really depends on how the editing schedule goes. However, we're going to get this done as much as possible. We've got a lot of things to talk about, and the first being, we had a Saudi show, ladies and gentlemen, Super Showdown 2020, and let's break it down. Now, full disclosure, I did not watch this show because I, like most other hardworking people, had to go to work on a day that there's like a 7-hour time difference, and so it's nighttime there and it's daytime here, and peeps got to go to work. So I had to go to work, so I did not watch the show. Full disclosure, I probably wouldn't have watched this anyway if I had the day off. Not because it's Saudi Arabia or anything like that, just because this is WWE we're talking about, and I don't want to. Really, my level of investment in WWE's ton of product is at arm's length. You know, I like watching certain shows and certain things, but unless somebody says to me specifically, go watch this, is a train wreck, or I have some sort of vested interest, or if I'm doing it for you, the listeners, if I'm doing it for the podcast, then I will watch shows. But other than that, it's really like I kind of do what I want to do, and I have that right because this is my podcast. So we had a Saudi show, 2020, Super Showdown, and we're just going to break down the match results of this card and see if I have a reaction to these. And there's probably a lot of these I'm not, just because I don't really have much of a care for a lot of these things, because WWE for several years now have conditioned their fans not to care, or to care only enough to where they break the trust and then they remind them don't care. So we start off the show with the Viking Raiders versus Anderson and Gallows, and this was not a team, this was not a tag title match at all, but this was the Viking Raiders end up losing again to Anderson and Gallows. And I like the OC, and I think what they're doing is great with them and AJ, and they all look like stars, and they all do good stuff. Like, I've always liked Anderson and Gallows, even when they were in New Japan. I wish that the Viking Raiders weren't taken. I wish that they weren't called the Viking Raiders, first of all. The War Raiders was fine. War Machine was even better. And their whole really getting too-fledged full into this whole Viking deal, I don't think is necessary either. You know, at least they're not an experience anymore, but the reason they're not an experience is that, A, because the name was ridiculously stupid, and B, because they didn't really bother to treat them like a tag team, because for whatever reason, WWE just does not care about tag team wrestling. Not to say that AEW does, and we'll talk about that another time, but as far as as far as this goes, I just wish the Viking Raiders were cared about more as far as from upper management. And obviously I love Anderson and Gallows, and they obviously deserve to win. They were the ones who beat the Viking Raiders from the outset, the initial ones who beat them. So I don't know if this even bears any significance as far as where these two teams are going. I know that making the OC look strong was important for the rest of the night and where they're going with the OC, and it's very obvious that they have more plans for the OC as far as a prominent tag team, or at least as a prominent fixture in the WWE landscape. So no surprise that they won here, but still kind of sad that the Viking Raiders, who started off with that undefeated streak, are here losing in Saudi Arabia once again. And but if you are upset about people losing, especially people who you think deserve the push, then this was not the show for you. Oh, Nelly de Nelly, no. So this was. Now we're going to the Kunai with Chain Trophy Gauntlet, sponsored by Joey from Yu-Gi-Oh, Joey Wheeler. The Kunai with Chain. R-Truth comes out first and beats Bobby Lashley, which is kind of funny because Bobby Lashley, after this gigantic push, and he's the first one eliminated, well, R-Truth goes the distance. R-Truth beats Bobby Lashley, he beats Andrade, and then beats Eric Rowan, and then loses to AJ Styles. And that's pretty, honestly, that's pretty darn impressive that R-Truth is getting that kind of endurance. And hey, listen, I like R-Truth. I think R-Truth has, you know, he's definitely been a comedy guy for a long time, but when he did that run in 2011 as a heel, I loved it. It was ridiculous, but he got good heat. I really liked heel R-Truth. And R-Truth, I think, still has, you know, as his career is starting to dwindle, just for age purposes, I think that he deserves another good run with somebody, you know, give him a high-profile match or a high-profile feud. He was doing great with Carmella. I mean, he made that U.S. title fun. And, but AJ Styles winning, I think, was probably the right decision here, especially because, oh, wait, he did it. Because we forgot about Rey Mysterio, because the OC ended up taking out the Rey Mysterio, and then The Undertaker took out the OC. All of this happened backstage on TV, so everyone was able to see this on the Tron. I'm sure you all are happy you paid your tickets to go watch a Tron. And then out comes The Undertaker, doesn't take a... Okay. I'm sorry, I can't say this without laughing because it's the absurdity. The absurdity of this. Undertaker comes out, spends 4 to 5 minutes walking down the ramp, doesn't take off his coat and hat. AJ walks right into a chokeslam, and The Undertaker wins the Kunai with Chain trophy. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? And listen, I understand they're setting up AJ and Undertaker at Mania. Is this really how we wanted to do this? Is this really what we wanted this feud to be about? Was, you took my trophy from Saudi Arabia, man, I'm gonna fight you now. Does anyone really want this feud to happen because of something like this? It's just like, I don't get it. I'm all for Undertaker and AJ at WrestleMania. Don't get me wrong. I think AJ is probably going to bring Taker to a great match. Not that Taker needs somebody to carry him, but AJ is AJ and Taker is Taker, and I think they're going to work very well together, and that's not what I'm talking about. But would this have hurt AJ if he had just won it? Wouldn't that have helped AJ? And then have The Undertaker come out and chokeslam him, do the thing, tombstone, take the trophy, walk out, and then he can be like, that's my trophy, and whatever. Taker didn't need this win. I know this was like a $2 million payday, I'm sure. But the Tuwak trophy, and I hate when companies do this. And they did this with the, I think was it last year? I think it was last year or the year before, when they had the Money in the Bank that Brock just happened to walk in on and win. You know, and that he wasn't even in the match, wasn't announced in the match, but here he comes, boom, wins. Same deal with Undertaker. Oh, well, looks like I'm just going to show up and give a choke slam and win. Can we not do that? You know, if it's something beforehand and you say, okay, now you can come in, it's WWE style. They want to do it like, oh, what a twist this was, but to me, it isn't much of anything. It's just The Undertaker. It's just The Undertaker. And it's just AJ Styles. I look forward to their Mania match because I guarantee you it's going to be a jillion times better than whatever the hell that was. And now I understand in full-fledged that I am recording this in true Smark style of I didn't watch the show, but I'm going to comment on the results. But if there is anything truly, any of you listening to this right now, if there's something that I absolutely have to watch on this show, leave it in the comments section below while you're liking and subscribing and hitting that bell button. If there's you let me know if there's something I absolutely deadpan have to watch because it's so good or it's so awful that it's just either spectrum. I'll watch either spectrum. But unless you guys say something, I'm not doing it. So enjoy my commentary for what my commentary is, because this is, of course, the Court Martial podcast made by Smark for Smarks, and that is never going to change. So then we have the Smackdown Tag Team Championships, and The Miz and Morrison beat the New Day. I don't have any issues with this. I like Miz and Morrison. I like them together. I think them coming back was honestly the best place to put Morrison in returning to WWE, because I think Morrison on his own, it's not that I don't think he's a world champion caliber talent, but with the amount of people on WWE's roster right now, it would be very easy for Morrison to just get lost in the shuffle, and putting him right back with Miz keeps him relevant and keeps him noticed. And I like that, and the last thing I'd want for John Morrison is for him to just become another guy. So the fact that The Miz and Morrison beat the New Day to win these titles, I'm all for. I can't wait to see what they do with them. The New Day, they don't need these titles at this point. I think that they're doing just fine at doing what they're doing. And Miz and Morrison, they're great. I can't wait to see the run with the tag titles. And who knows what's going to happen with the New Day. Because I have this feeling that Kofi and Big E might just happen to start having some ideological differences that Xavier, when he comes back, tries to reunite everybody. We'll have to see what happens with the New Day. But I have this inclination that this run of the New Day that has spanned the better part of 5 years, which is ridiculous, 6 years, might just be coming closer and closer to an end. But we'll have to see as the days roll on. Next is a match that was announced the day before, and I do not care about this match. I never did care about this match. Angel Garza versus Humberto Carrillo. And Garza beats Carrillo via pinfall. I have nothing to say about this. I don't know either of these two guys. I haven't really seen any matches between either of these two guys. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, because I know Angel Garza is doing well with Zelina Vega at the moment. Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo, to me, are two unknown guys. I know nothing about either of these two, and as a result, I would not have cared about this match, even if I did watch the show. I just don't... I got nothing. I really don't have anything to say about that match. So we're going to move right along with the Raw Tag Team Championships, that Rollins and the talent formerly known as Buddy Murphy, now only known as Murphy, beat the Street Profits and retain the titles. And I don't have a problem with this either. And from what I've been told, this was actually one of the better matches on the card, which is no surprise, because Seth Rollins is a hell of a tag wrestler, and Buddy Murphy, who I'm still going to call Buddy Murphy, because I'm not going to just call him Murphy, because that's dumb. Like most of the other names that they've withdrawn, just dumb. The Street Profits I like. I haven't really seen many of their matches, truth be told. Mostly I've just seen them in the segments, but I like the segments that they do, but I haven't really seen them compete. So maybe I'm going to have to take a look and see what these guys actually can do, because I think I've only seen them once before, and my memory is kind of hazy on it. So maybe if there's any match that I do actually go back and watch, it might be this one. Rollins and Murphy, we'll have to see what they do with this, but God, Rollins' personality is so annoying, but God, he's still a hell of a worker. He's still a hell of an athlete. There's no disputing that. So Rollins and Murphy keeping the tag titles, I got no problem with. Next up is Dolph Ziggler versus the guy who we literally only see for these episodes of these Saudi shows. This is the only time this dude ever shows up, and I'd really like to see this guy actually do other things, maybe on NXT or some regular thing. It's Dolph Ziggler versus Mansoor, and Mansoor obviously won because Saudi Arabia, but at this point, I don't know I don't know this guy. I don't have any reason to invest in this guy other than he's the Saudi Arabia guy who all the Saudis are going to cheer for. I'd like to actually try to get invested in this guy. If they're going to push him at every Saudi show, I at least want to know why I should be cheering him. Explain to me why this guy's important other than, oh, he's a Saudi in a Saudi Arabia. Is that all you got? And then you're going to pit him against a guy who people are apathetic about in the States, in Dolph Ziggler. So I don't know. Another one that was added last minute that's just an odd decision. And can we get Mansoor on some actual television here in the States so we can actually have some semblance of investment in this guy before we have him just thrust into a Saudi match? So, we're just going to move right on along with that. Next was the WWE title, Lesnar Ricochet. This lasted 90 seconds. There's really no surprises here. Me talking is probably going to last longer than this match, talking about Brock. I was really hoping that they would actually have a match that was longer than 90 seconds. I was hoping we might be able to get like even a 5-minute match. 5 minutes would have been fine. But 90 seconds, And I don't know, I mean, maybe they were trying to just make the whole show go by faster. I don't know what kind of promo packages or anything they did. I don't know what kind of Saudi hype videos they did on this one, because, again, I don't watch these shows. So, Ricochet, I mean, Ricochet didn't stand a chance. We knew Ricochet didn't stand a chance. It would have been nice to have seen Ricochet be a little more competitive than he was, but this is Brock Lesnar we're talking about, and we got to make Brock look strong going into facing Drew. So I don't really have a problem per se with this match, but I would have liked to have seen Brock try to F5 Ricochet 5 or 6 times, and Ricochet gotten out of it 5 or 6 times, and then got Lesnar frustrated, more frustrated, more frustrated. So finally, when he does hit the F5, one F5 pins Ricochet 1, 2, 3. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a Ricochet display, because he did that with Finn. He made Finn look good. He made Daniel Bryan look good. I'm talking about Brock Lesnar, that is. He's worked with a lot of these younger guys, he's worked with a lot of these smaller guys, AJ Styles, and really killed it and dominated. And really made and had great matches with them, and I just don't see why they couldn't have, even with Ricochet losing the way that Ricochet was going to lose, why they couldn't have just given Ricochet a little bit more here. Then comes Reigns and Corbin in a cage. I don't really have much to say about that. Roman Reigns wins on his way to facing, well, we'll get to that. We will get to that. But this cage match was kind of, from what I'm looking here, from what I'm seeing here, and I've kind of just reading some reviews and some descriptions, was not necessarily, and I guess it was a Superman punch that won it, which, when was the last time a Superman punch won a match? I'm not saying don't protect finishers, but when was the last time that the Superman punch was a finisher? I don't know. I'm just happy. I hope this feud is over. That's all I gotta say. I hope this feud is over. So, that's that. Then we have a surprisingly late on the card in Saudi Arabia. We have the Smackdown Women's Championship, Bayley and Naomi. And this is truly surprising that they put this match on this late in the show. Primarily because, though, the whole stigma with Saudi Arabia and their treatment of women, and then the fact that this is even on the show was pretty surprising. And then the fact that they were able to come do this and be able to do this and still put on a good match. From what I'm saying, this looks like this was the second best match of the night. From what I'm watching, from what I'm seeing here on my notes, and you let me know. I mean, again, I told you I didn't watch the show, so if I need to see this stuff, you need to let me know, because I'm not going to go back and watch it unless you do. So, congrats to Bayley and Naomi, that the fact that they were on this late in the show and that it ended up being a good match on the show, and that it seemed to have been received pretty well. And then comes the Universal Championship, and this is what I want. This is the match I really wanted to talk about. Okay, so this is going to transition into the second talking point of the night, and I'm going to. This is Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, versus Goldberg for the Universal Championship. Now, earlier in this week, I went on a Spitfire-fueled rant on the social medias regarding this match. That, A, this match shouldn't have been booked, and that almost guaranteed Vince McMahon and WWE were going to do what Vince McMahon and WWE do, which is troll their fans and alienate their fans and condition their fans not to care. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because Bray Wyatt, who's been built up for the past, 8 or 9 months since the Firefly Funhouse started, and is now going to be fed to a 53-year-old guy who can't work. Who is a spectacle and not a wrestler in Goldberg. And I was right, because that's exactly what happened. And I was upset about this, not because, there's the theory that Reigns was going to face Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania and win the belt, which would have been fine, and I like Bray and I like Roman, and the matches they've had prior to have actually been quite good. I remember them having, I think, a street fight, maybe, at the Rumble or Survivor Series. I know that they've had some good matches in the past, have Wyatt and Reigns. So it probably would have been good. However, this was so this is what I have seen. This is what I am hearing happen. Spear from Goldberg, 1 count. 3 more spears, and then the Fiend counters with a mandible claw, and then Goldberg breaks out of it, jackhammer. That's the wrap. 2.5 minutes. I actually expected this to be more of a squash than it was. From what I really expected it to just be spear, jackhammer, 1, 2, 3. Thanks for the $3 million. I'll see you later. The fact that it didn't do that is, I guess, better. I mean, at least what that tells me is that the Fiend, really, when you think about it, the Fiend is tougher than Brock Lesnar. Kayfabe-wise, because think about it. Brock Lesnar took 2 spears and 1 jackhammer, and that was it. Wyatt just took 4 and a jackhammer, and got the mandible claw and got offense in against Goldberg. And that does not normally happen with Goldberg. Usually Goldberg can only do his own thing. So the fact that, no matter how good or bad this match was, kayfabe-wise, Goldberg actually did the Fiend pretty well by selling the surprise that the Fiend was able to withstand that kind of punishment. And I think that the Fiend is going to, because they say the lights went out and then he disappeared. I think there's going to be more to this. I think that, honestly, I was upset about this because I hate the fact that WWE cannot help themselves but to put the older guys over, because they have not bothered, because they've been lazy, and because they've been a publicly traded company and have way too much money, and they're not getting it from actually building stars that could be draws, because they don't need to draw because they have so much money from this publicly traded stock company. They don't need to build stars. They haven't built stars for the last 10 years. They had an opportunity to do that with The Fiend, and they decided to go with Goldberg. And I'm not knocking Goldberg, because Goldberg is an attraction and he is a draw, because he was built at the time when you needed superstars, and WWE doesn't give a rat's ass about superstars anymore, because they're just happy with the little extra nostalgia bumps that they're getting with stuff like this. But because they have so much money already, and they've thrown the fans overboard, clearly, because they've conditioned us not to care, and they don't care about, and they don't want to build new stars, because they don't have to build new stars, because they're already making enough money to sustain themselves. This was just a perfect example of of the laziness that is WWE. WWE's booking is lazy. It's not, well, it is bad, but it's just lazy. It's lazy because they don't care enough to build any stars, because they don't have to. So they're just gonna give the older guys stuff, and then when they wonder why the newer guys aren't drawing, it's because WWE wants the brand to be what's over. They don't care about the talent getting over. They care about the brand getting over. They care about WWE being over. And as a result, that's why we have these situations. They're doing it deliberately because they have more money than they ever needed. And I said it earlier today, going public on the stock exchange was single-handedly both the greatest and the worst decision that WWE ever did. Because financially, it's been the most profitable thing they could have done. It's made Vince McMahon and all of his cohorts multi-billionaires. But at the same time, it has laid in this level of complacency so thick and deep-rooted that it has made these people delusional into thinking that this is the kind of thing that its fans want, because he doesn't need to care about what his fans want. And this is why we are where we are. And the internet, I'm sure, as we speak, is crumbling. But Goldberg is your new Universal Champion. Goldberg's going to go face Roman Reigns, which honestly, at first I was upset about this happening, but I've come to terms with it. I've come to terms with Goldberg winning this belt, and I actually think it might have actually been the better move. Let me explain. WWE, in the vein of making foolish decisions with people that should be stars and could be stars, made the mistake of putting the belt on Wyatt in the first place. Not that I don't want Bray Wyatt to be world champion, but at the time, the Fiend was still really just getting established. And they could have put him in a higher profile feuds with people like Goldberg and The Undertaker and all these bigger guys without the belt, and it would have felt more important without the belt, because when you give the guy the belt, inevitably he has to lose the belt. That's why Roddy Piper never wanted the world title, because that would imply that he had to lose. And there are very few times that Roddy Piper ever lost clean. So giving the belt to Wyatt was pretty much the kiss of death for Bray Wyatt in a weird way, and inevitably it had to be somebody, and of course they could not help themselves but give it to somebody who was long past their prime at a show that is wrapped in controversy. So, and I made a joke and I said, if Bray Wyatt won the title and also lost the title in Saudi Arabia, did he ever hold the title? Because who knows whether, because they never mention these shows and they always say that they're canon, but they're not canon, and they have this weird state of limbo. So did Bray Wyatt ever really win the world title? Do we know that for sure? Did anyone really see it? You know, we all believe that he had the title, but whoever really saw it, especially with those red lights, you just couldn't see. So do we know for sure that Bray Wyatt ever won the belt? Are we sure it didn't just disappear in the sands of Saudi Arabia and Goldberg just happened to find it and hold it up in the middle of the arena, and then pyro went off and that was the end of that? But kidding aside, this matches like this and booking like this is so infuriating to loyal fans, because it just reminds them that once again Vince McMahon does not give a fuck about his fans, because he doesn't need to, because he's making more money. He could fill 50 caskets next to him with the amount of money he has. So he's gonna go die with all of his money tapped right around him in a nice little warm paper blanket, and he's not gonna think once about what his fans or what the fans of WWE want or care about. And that's why it's very obvious that they clearly just don't give a shit about the ratings either. Because why? They don't need anyone. They don't need anyone watching. So long as as long as something in that arena has a pulse, they're going to be making money. So they don't really care if people buy tickets or not. And it's very obvious that they refuse to make stars. It's not that they can't, they refuse to. And they've seen it with momentum that they've killed and crushed for the last decade. This has been 10 years running. It started with the Nexus, and then you had the first iteration of Bray Wyatt and Rusev and and Kevin Owens and Braun Strowman, and it's criminal what they did to Braun Strowman. Becky Lynch's time is coming. I guarantee you Becky Lynch's time is coming. And the list goes on. The list goes on. Those are just a few people. But I'm sure that you could probably name several other people that they have done this to, in the vein of gaining momentum but forcing them to lose that momentum, because God forbid anyone become bigger than the brand. God forbid another John Cena show up. And I seriously think that Vince McMahon has got that obsessive girlfriend complex, He's like, if they get too popular, they're gonna leave, and if they leave, they may never come back. We have to make sure they never get that big. They never get big again, so they never leave me, because I'm the man, and I'm the one who's gonna keep them all in line. Everyone's below. That's what's happening. Excuse me, that's a really hard voice to maintain. But that's where we are. And now, speaking of Vince McMahon, we are going to cross-blur our way into the next topic, which is Vince McMahon. Because he's not our superstar spotlight. Believe me, he's not our superstar spotlight. But there is this stigma, right? And I would say that it's very appropriate to some description, but not entirely. Everybody, whenever somebody has a problem with Monday Night Raw, with how shitty Raw is, or how much WWE is tanked in every other aspect but financially, or NXT, because NXT's great, everybody blames it solely on the shoulders of Vince McMahon. Almost always. And you hear these things from the dirty sheets saying that, oh, the writers came up with the show and then Vince McMahon just rewrote it. Of course, he had that very damning podcast, the Talk is Jericho podcast with Moxley, where Moxley basically said, yep, it's all Vince. Vince is just going on and screwing it all up. And so they're saying, and even Corny, even Cornette is, and Brian Last on their podcast, they're like, oh, yep, it's all Vince. It's got to be all Vince. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And here's the reason why. At the end of the day, Vince McMahon has the say. No disputing that, not knocking that, and as a result, a lot of the decisions do end up falling on his shoulders. And of course, as I just ranted about, Vince doesn't give a shit because he's got... Because why? He doesn't have to worry. He's worried about the XFL. He doesn't give a crap about WWE anymore. That's just the cash cow that he's using to pat himself until he finally kicks the bucket, at which point, if WWE's underwater, he won't care because he'll be dead. And he's already made enough money to do whatever he wants, but he's going to redeem himself through the XFL. But everybody places Vince as the guy who, if Vince McMahon died, everything be fine. And, you know, even the whole Punk's pipe bomb, he was talking about this in 2011. About this burying talent. Seriously, this has been something ongoing for the entire decade. This has been a 10 years worth of the same frustrating garbage over and over and over again. Is it Vince to blame? Partially. But what happened to the balls on people? What happened to people standing up and saying, Vince, this is fucking bullshit. I'm not doing this. And why is it that all of these people, if all these talent who claim that they're unhappy because of their booking, if all of these people are so upset, if the agents are upset, if this is really such a problem, why is nobody saying anything? Why is nobody going, Vince, this isn't working. This system is not working. You are losing fans by the hundreds of thousands. Your ratings drop every week. People don't care. Nobody's over. There's no fans. There's no baby faces or heels. It's just a bunch of bland, drawn-out 3 hours worth of standing around or watching a television monitor and no wrestling, TV soap opera drama show, like D-show, drama show, should be shown on UPN, but UPN has some dignity. Product. And Vince doesn't care because Vince doesn't care. Well, what about all the people who are supposed to care? What about everybody underneath them? Do they just not care because they're all silenced by a hefty paycheck? Clearly that's happened to a lot of these older wrestlers who aren't even going to wrestle, but Vince is signing them to Legends deals just so they don't go to AEW. So they're all picking up paychecks, just being happy to take the millions and millions of dollars. Has money truly silenced the wrestling industry so badly that what we see now is the best that it's ever going to get? Or is the wrestling industry just going to die out because WWE got too much money? and now is gonna, and I truly believe that WWE eventually will become the Roman Empire, and I'm not talking Roman Reigns, but they're going to expand so far that they're going to just drop. That eventually they're just going to lose their standing, because they're going to get 500,000 viewers for both shows, because nobody cares, and they will have destroyed any era of legitimacy, because they wanted to make it a kids cartoon show as opposed to Jake the Snake pulling out a live snake biting Macho Man Randy Savage. But thank God we've got Suffer and Succotash and the guys who actually were over, beating people who had the potential of actually being catered to a mainstream audience and getting some attention. So, no, I don't blame Vince for every problem that WWE has. You know who I blame? I blame all the people who's been castrated by the almighty dollar, who won't bother to tell Vince to his face that everything he does is fucking stupid. And if none of you've got the balls, then none of you should none of you should be upset with what you are. Accept and resign yourself to the fact that this is all just a bunch of blather. It's all just blather that you've all set yourself up for, and that you can blame Vince as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it takes every one of those people in that company not doing anything and sitting there and letting Vince get away with all this, whether he has the final say or not. None of the talent has the balls to say, fuck you, I'm not doing this. It doesn't have, none of the agents have the ability to go, Vince, this isn't going to work. None of the people in the writer's room go, Vince, fuck you, I'm not going along with this anymore. And because all this money is so interchangeable, Vince probably feels that he's infallible at this point and can just fire people at will, because there's going to be 100 people who are willing to take $500,000 a year to let Vince just jerk himself off. I mean, shit. I don't know what else to say. I don't think that Vince McMahon is the only reason to blame for why WWE sucks. And it does suck. I don't care how much you apologists tried to defend it. I don't care how much the people who do like it want to like it, go ahead and like it. But the fact of the matter is, point blank, bar none, whether they have their good moments, their bad moments, good shows or bad shows, as a whole, WWE sucks. Period. Full stop. And this is coming from a guy who loved WWE, who grew up on WWE as a kid. And now, if I only watch it if I absolutely have to. And that's where we're at. And I know I am not the only person who feels this way. There are far more people who feel this way than care about this company. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen WWE in 2001 and 2002 getting 6s, and now here we are, and Raw is barely scraping 2.1. The numbers don't lie. And if you want to go for the answer, you want to know what the real problem is, it's not Vince McMahon, it's the fact that they have more money than they know what to do with, and that money has made them complacent and lazy, and nobody wants to rock the boat because everybody's eating and living comfortably. And comfort is what's going to undo the wrestling business. Mark my words. Oh, are you sick of hearing me yet? So let's move on to something actually worthwhile. Let's move on to something. Well, I've already ranted for far longer on this than I wanted to, but let's talk about our match of the week. Eventually, I'm going to have a little sweeper tune for the match of the week, but I haven't come up with it yet. But if you want to submit submissions for the match of the week jingle, by all means, please do send the link to, make it a YouTube video and send the link to the Twitter at CM Podcast, or leave the link in the comments below and I will take a look at it, and who knows, maybe we will have it debut at some point here on the podcast. But our match of the week this week is from Starcade 1987, in a complete opposite and 180 turn of direction. This week we're talking about the Road Warriors versus Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson for the NWA Tag Team Championships at, like I said, Starcade 87. This was about midway through the show, and I'm going to just read through my notes a little bit. Boy, what a simpler time this was. The Road Warriors outfits were so much more simple. Just the tights on their side said Warrior and whatever one it was, Hawk or Animal. I miss Hawk. I forgot how great Hawk was. Animal obviously was also tremendous. It was great. I'm going to tell you about all the great things I liked about this match. There were some bad things I didn't like. But we're going to go through this match one by one. At this point, the Road Warriors had not won the tag titles from the NWA or from WCW. It started out with Arn and Hawk rather. And they do a lock, they do a lock up. J.G. Dillon's in Tully and Arn's corner with the Horsemen. And then, of course, the Road Warriors had Paul Ellering there. And so, Road Warriors, Hawk comes in. The Road Warriors, of course, at this point, were just dominating everybody. So they get a ton of offense in. Arn gets thrown into the outside. And Road Warrior Animal comes up and picks him up. And it looks like he's going to, like, body slam him down outside the ring, but instead just pushes him back in the ring, not letting him stay outside and get a breather. It's nice to see baby faces respecting the rules. It's nice to see a match with rules, because that is not always a guarantee in modern wrestling. And then Hawk hits one of the most beautiful drop kicks I've ever seen, and I think Road Warrior Hawk might have the best drop kick I've ever seen. I like Orton's too, but I really do believe that the best drop kick, especially for that time, Dynamite Kid could get some credit, but I think Road Warrior Hawk needs to get some credit for his dropkick. Actually, his and Animal's dropkicks looked great, but Hawk's really was just picture perfect. Then the next fun spot was Tully coming off the top, and Tully comes off the top with a crossbody, and Animal catches him with a power slam, which was also beautiful. And then Tully tags in Arn, and then some great piece of body language, because Arn kind of looks... he gets the tag from Tully and then looks into the ring and Animal and kind of touches his head like, oh, God, now I got to go in and fight this guy. And it was just a great little piece. It was called an uh-oh tag, which I thought was very good and showed how much fun Arn was. Even just the body language really tells the story. And then Arn gets hit with it looks like it's going to be a bear hug. And then calls in Tully, and Tully gets hits him in the knee, and then they go for they were going to do something, but then they get a double clothesline. And during that double clothesline, Arn rolls out of the ring, and Tully gets covered, but Tully was never tagged. So a little miscommunication there. Maybe they thought they'd just pull the wool over the fans' eyes and they wouldn't notice, but I noticed. Tully never tagged, which goes to show that even in the 80s, in the glory days of the 80s, there were botches. But they weren't nearly as distinguished because there was so much more storytelling involved, so you were caught up more in the storytelling, so if something like that happened, you were more likely to not talk about it. Then, there's the press. There was a press to a drop kick to the knee, and then that's where Arn and Tully get going. They start working on the knee, working on Hawk. Then Hawk tried the schoolboy, but botched the schoolboy. But it didn't really hurt anything. Again, there were botches in wrestling. And then of course Arn distracting the referee to Tully getting a chair shot. The only thing I didn't like about this was that the angle that they showed it, you couldn't tell unless you watched the feed of the referee that Arn had distracted the referee because he was right at the ropes. But the angle was so that you were seeing Tully grab the chair, yell at the referee, but the referee's out of frame, and then hit the chair shot. But you don't, unless you're looking at the feet of the referee, you can't really tell that the referee's turned around and that Arn's distracting. I actually had to go back and watch it just to make sure. Then Tully puts a figure 4 on, which was confusing because in a time when you had to respect everybody else's moves, and if you were lower on the card, you really shouldn't do any moves that were going on the upper card. That didn't make any sense because Flair was going on later, and Flair was going to face Ron Garvin for the NWA World Championship. A match that I have not gotten to yet because I'm trying to get through Starcade 87, but I chose this specific match. Then Hawk gets the hot tag to Animal. Animal starts making a comeback. Tully starts running out of the ring, and Hawk goes after him. And once Hawk turns the turnbuckle, he turns around the turnbuckle, and as soon as Hawk does that, he remembers he has to sell the knee, which is funny. He starts going down, he turns the turnbuckle, he's like, oh shit. It was just funny to find. Then the referee gets plowed by Tully Blanchard, and he goes out of the ring. Then, back in the days when over the top rope actually meant a disqualification, Arn Anderson gets tossed over the top rope by Animal, and hits the second referee, which is Earl Hebner, on the outside, and knocks him out. But they didn't know that Tommy Young saw it. So then the Animal and Hawk hit the Doomsday Device, and Earl Hebner comes in, 1, 2, 3, we have new tag team champions. But we don't have new tag team champions because the original referee, Tommy Young, had seen the over-the-top rope that Hawk had given to Tully Blanchard, and as a result, Tully and Arn retain their titles via disqualification because Tommy Young, the original referee in the middle of the ring, the one in the ring, has the senior official decision. So technically, it is a disputed ref decision, but Tully and Arn get a little heat because they won the title, but via disqualification. But technically, the Road Warriors didn't get pinned or submitted. They still look strong. Tully and Arn still look like they squeaked out with a win. Furthers the feud. Everything about this, it may have been a little rough around the edges, but for the storytelling and the energy and the excitement and how much the crowd was into it, I loved this match. This is the kind of wrestling I like. It doesn't have to be perfect moves. It doesn't even have to look that spectacular. But if you can get the story and you can get the body language, you get the people into it, and you can see the cheers. I mean, the Road Warriors got a massive pop. I mean, a massive pop when they got that 1, 2, 3, and then they got heat when Tully and Arn got heat when that decision was reversed. And you don't see enough of that nowadays. And so, all in all, a good match for what it was worth. And it was, and I'd be interested to see where that feud kept going, and maybe I'll have to do a little bit more deep dive into those old NWA days, and we might get some more matches of the week from there. And real quick, I'm going to talk about this, I mean real quick, my Superstar Spotlight was going to be John Morrison. However, for the sake of time, and I'm getting told that we have to go to our commercial break, we are going to save that Superstar Spotlight for next week. So what we will do is we will do a duo Superstar Spotlight, and we will talk about, and this is the first time I'm ever hyping, next week. Next week, we are going to do a duo Superstar Spotlight. We are going to talk about John Morrison and The Miz. We will talk about both of their respective careers, what they've done, some good matches that we like. Plus, we are going to have an additional piece of broadcasting coming to you at some point later this week. And I'm not sure exactly when it's going to release, but it's going to be a nice little teeny piece of material, something a little bit, an additional little piece of Court Martial podcast in case one podcast per week isn't enough. We're going to give you a little bit more, but with that said, we have to. I'm getting told we have to go to our first commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about John Morrison, we're going to talk about The Miz, we're going to talk about new wrestling promotions and what I would do were I starting one. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.